ほら、ルフィ、今一緒に海賊になる仲間を探してるんだ。
Hello guys, welcome to my channel The Wandering Zoro, your go-to destination for anime-related content. And if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest videos. In today's video, we're going to be diving into part 1 of the series, What If Deku Got Broken Ability to Level Up? So be sure to stick around until the end, and let's get started. A boy with green hair stared blankly at the bright yellow sky. His body was covered in dirt, dust, and bruises. His name is Izuku Yagi, the son of Toshinori Yagi, All Might's #1 hero, and his mother Inko Yagi, who is just an ordinary civilian. The two met by accident when they fell in love with each other and eventually got married. He also has a twin sister named Izumi Yagi. Izuku inherited his mother's green hair and his father's blue eyes, while Izumi inherited her father's blonde hair and her mother's green eyes. Izuku was lying on the ground after being beaten up by his dear little sister and her friends. His body was covered in bruises from the bullies who beat him. He never wanted to be treated like this, but it all started 2 years ago when he was 4 years old. Flashback. Your son has no quirk. Everyone in the room was silent. His parents and sister, they were shocked by the words of the doctor who examined him. But how is that possible? The doctor showed them an X-ray of his leg, and then he started to explain. Please look at this. He has 2 joints in his legs, which means he doesn't have any quirks. But the good news is your daughter has a quirk called telekinesis, which allows her to move things around her at will. If she trains it well, she can become the hero he wants to be. I congratulate you both. End of flashback. Things started to change from then on. His parents started ignoring him, and his sister and friends started bullying him too. They didn't care if he was smart or talented. They didn't think he was valuable enough when he was just quirkless. Izuku wasn't sure about this sudden change. He was just confused about whether to be sad or angry with the current situation. Izuku stood up and cleaned the dust and dirt on his clothes. He took a deep breath and started walking home before the day got dark. He honestly didn't want to go home, but he had no other choice. What can a 6-year-old boy who doesn't have a quirk do in this crazy society when he doesn't even have the power to protect himself? He arrived home and saw his parents and sister having dinner with a warm conversation going on between them. They didn't bother to see him come home late. Izuku walked straight to her room and closed the door without making a sound. He didn't want to disturb their harmonious family. Izuku then took cotton, bandages, and antiseptic to treat his wounds. After he finished, he turned on his computer to see what was going on outside. He started browsing several news sites. Most of the stories are about the activities of the heroes. Some are about the heroes making their debut, and some are about the actions of the heroes stopping the attacks of the villains. Since childhood Izuku is an intelligent and mature child, he likes to watch and analyze things. Sometimes he also watches some videos of heroes on the internet and starts analyzing their quirks and fighting ways. Be it the way they work, the strengths or weaknesses of their quirks. He also recorded all the results of his analysis in his notebook, which he hid under his bed. It's just one of his ways to pass the time and overcome his loneliness. You could say it's his hobby. Izuku, who was too immersed in his work, didn't notice that time had passed. He looked at the clock showing 11 o'clock. Looks like I missed dinner this time too. Izuku talked to himself and then turned off his computer. He then went to his bed, lying there while staring at the dark ceiling. Sometimes he wonders why he has to go through all this. It wasn't his fault that he didn't have a quirk, but everyone else rejected him. In this society where 80% of civilians have a quirk, is there still a place for him? He then closed his eyes and then fell asleep. He could only see darkness, but somehow he felt that there was something there. In the darkness, Izuku saw a pair of blue lights that resembled eyes. The light then grew beyond his field of vision. He began to see what kind of creature was behind those shining eyes. More than 10,000 black soldiers bowed to him. Not only knights, but also monsters, elves, giants, and other creatures commonly seen in comics, movies, or games. In front of them, all stood two figures, one a robed knight with a red mane adorning his helmet, and the other a very tall knight with 4 wings attached to his back and a giant sword hanging on his waist. Izuku stared at them. They all bowed their heads toward him, as if they were paying their respects to their king. The knight with 4 wings took out his sword and offered it to him. The moment he touched the sword, a light suddenly shot out and brought him back to reality. Izuku woke up sweating with his heart racing. He took a deep breath. He could see a ray of light peeking through the curtains of his room. Is it morning already? He looked at the clock on his desk. It was still 5 in the morning. It's still too early to go to school. He then stood up and went to the bathroom to wash his face. Izuku looked at her reflection reflected in the mirror. A 6-year-old boy with disheveled hair and a dark expression unsuitable for his age. He then rubbed his face with a towel to remove the water from his face. It must be a bad dream. He was also not sure if this was called a nightmare or not, but somehow he felt a strange connection with the black soldier. It seemed he had known them for a very long time, and he had a long history with them. Izuku felt that it didn't make sense, then brushed the thought away and then hurriedly took a shower. After taking a shower, he then took his bag and immediately left the house. As usual, he tried his best not to make a sound, as his parents always said. Remain silent. He was walking around the apartment complex where he lived and decided to stop by the store to buy some food. Even though he hadn't eaten anything since last night, he wasn't starving. Maybe because he was used to being ignored. After picking up some food and paying for it, he walked to Dagoba Beach. Even though this place is full of trash, it still has a nice sunrise view. It's quite peaceful here, with the sound of the waves and the chirping of birds. It's not bad to have a little peace in this tiring life. Sometimes you need a break just to relieve stress. Excessive stress is not good for your health. Izuku learned that from his so-called friend, whom he was also unsure of, Bakugo Katsuki. That boy exploded easily from the slightest thing that bothered him, especially when it came to Izuku. At first, Izuku thought it was because of his quirk, but it was thanks to his high pride and stubborn nature. He didn't accept anyone being above him. Even though they were friends since childhood, Katsuki only looked at Izumi and always thought that Izuku was an eyesore. Izuku didn't mind this too much. He already knows that Katsuki likes his sister, so it's only natural that you don't want to have someone around someone you like. The sun was already high enough. It was time to go to school. Izuku packed his things, then went to school. On the way to school, he saw several children his age going to school with his friends or parents. Izuku sometimes envies that. He didn't have someone he could call a friend or someone he could call family. Everyone around him ignored him just because he was different. It was like a curse that haunted him all his life. He immediately shook his head, brushed off that thought, and continued walking his way to school. The moment he arrived at the school, he was greeted by an explosion right in front of the classroom door. Izuku fell to the floor from the explosion. He then looked up to see Katsuki and his friends already waiting for him, as well as his sister. "Hey Deku, I see you still have the face to come here. I thought you ran away crying like useless trash." Everyone watching started laughing at him, but he ignored it and went to his seat. Katsuki was getting annoyed at being ignored. He then grabbed Izuku by the collar and threw him to the back of the class. "What do you mean by that, ignoring me in front of the class? Do you think you are better than me, you useless bastard?" Izuku was silent. He was tired of just answering those useless questions. He then looked at his sister, who was just laughing with her hands covering her mouth. Izuku just took a deep breath as he saw this, which irritated Katsuki even more. Katsuki was about to throw a punch at Izuku, but he was saved by the ringing bell. Katsuki glared at him and started pointing his finger at him. "Wait until school is over. I'll make sure to teach you right." While he was saying that, the teacher entered the classroom. He then stood up and sat on his chair, as did the other students. Nothing else happened during school hours. Everything went as normally as it should, even at lunch. Izuku tries his best to avoid his sister Katsuki and his gang. He was always on the roof just to avoid these people. It was peaceful enough, but it only lasted until school was over. The bell rang, signaling the end of school. Izuku was packing his stuff and getting ready to go home when Katsuki and his sister started dragging him into an alley near the school. Katsuki slammed him against the wall while Izumi held him in the air using her quirk. Katsuki started throwing explosions at him, and they both started laughing at him. Too bad, brother, a quirkless like you is trying to be a hero. You better give up on that dream, you will never be a hero without a quirk. Izumi then knocked him to the ground so Katsuki could kick him in the stomach. Izuku groaned as he clutched his stomach, while the two of them just laughed at him and left him alone. Izuku was angry about what they had done to him. No, he was angry with himself for being useless and unable to do anything. He slammed his hands on the ground in anger. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! It's always like this. Why always me? If only there was a way to gain strength, then I... As he said that, a blue portal suddenly appeared in front of him. Izuku was stunned for a few seconds. When he was about to run, it was too late. The portal sucked him in, and he couldn't do anything about it. Inside the portal, Izuku was sitting on the ground, confused by what had just happened. He looked around and saw that he was inside some kind of cave. He stood up, dusting his clothes. He then looked around trying to find the entrance, but he couldn't find it. The portal that sucked it in was gone. Suddenly, he heard a voice coming from inside the cave. A group of little green creatures rushed towards him. The creature had pointed ears with an ugly face. They carried knives in their hands. The creature ran towards him. Seeing this, Izuku started running to avoid it. But unfortunately, there were bruises all over his body, and he was exhausted from being beaten earlier. He then tripped and fell to the ground. The green creatures started to surround him. They started laughing because they found such amusing prey. Izuku was afraid that he would die here, but he refused to let it happen. With his remaining determination and strength, he pumped his adrenaline, picked up a nearby rock, and started attacking the creature. Arg! He shouted his determination to attack the green creature. He hit the creature once, but it wasn't enough. He kept hitting the creature's head with the rock in his hand. His hands were drenched in the green blood of the creature. Izuku wasted no time and immediately took the creature's sword and used it to attack the remaining green creatures. Seeing their comrade being brutally killed, the green creature began to tremble in fear and immediately fled. Izuku looked around, then his eyes turned to look at the creature he had just killed. A body covered in green blood with a crushed head, corpses full of cuts, and several limbs scattered on the floor. Izuku couldn't bear to see this scene and immediately threw up all the contents of his stomach. It was the first time he had seen this kind of scene. It was natural for you to throw up in this kind of situation. Izuku lay on the floor resting, trying to process the situation she had been in. First, he was beaten as usual, then a portal suddenly appeared out of nowhere, bringing him here, then a strange green creature suddenly appeared and tried to kill him. What the hell is happening? Izuku stood up, picking up the knife from before. He thought it was over, but it wasn't. The green creatures came back with more of them. I didn't think it would end so quickly. There were 12 of them. Izuku gripped his knife, preparing to attack. He rushed at the green creature and directly launched an attack. Even though his movements were still clumsy and sloppy, he managed to kill them all somehow. This was Izuku's first time wielding a weapon, and he never dreamed he would use it to kill like now. He kept walking in the cave looking for a way out. He had met some green creatures several times on his way until he finally arrived at a giant door. He looked around to make sure there was no green creature nearby. Izuku then turned his gaze back to the door in front of him. He tries to put his hand on the door. The door suddenly opened by itself. The moment Izuku entered, the torches in the room suddenly lit up with blue flames. Inside, there are many statues, each holding a different weapon, and some holding instruments. The statue looks old and covered in moss. In the center of the room was an altar with symbols he couldn't understand. Izuku then looked back. All the statues were the same size, except for the one sitting on the throne, which was much bigger than the others. But among the statues, only one caught his eye. The corner statue holds some sort of bespoke plaque. First, worship God. Second, praise God. Third, prove your faith. Those who don't follow this order will never come back alive. When he finished reading it, he heard a sound from the door shut tightly, trapping him inside. Izuku then rolled his eyes at the largest statue and saw its eyes shining at him. The light formed in the eyes of the statue on the throne, and the statue shot a strong beam of light toward him. Izuku immediately ducked down to avoid it. He looked back, seeing that the trail of light rays had left quite a deep mark on the ground. "Ha ha ha! I will surely die if I get hit by that." Izuku laughed in horror at that. He turned his attention back to the statue in front of him. His face turned into a smirk. The statue suddenly stood up and tried to step on him. Izuku managed to dodge somehow, but it didn't end there. The other statues started to move and tried to attack Izuku. Damn it, how can I get out of this? He suddenly remembered the order plaque that the angel statue was holding. Izuku started memorizing the contents of the plaque. He started to think what the meaning behind those sentences was. Come on, think. Think. Is that all you got? He then looked around, trying to analyze the situation like he used to. He then realized that only the statue holding the weapon was moving, while the statue holding the instrument remained in place. Izuku rushed towards the statue holding the harp while dodging attacks from other statues. He managed to reach the statue, and the statue began to play the harp, emitting hymn notes to God. The statues stopped moving as soon as the song played. The ground suddenly trembles, and an altar appeared in the center of the space. Izuku thought the last sentence proved your faith. In some of the books that he reads, there are several ways of worshiping God, such as prayers, hymns, and finally sacrifices. Izuku stood up and walked towards the altar, orange flames burning around the inside of the altar and blue flames outside. The statues started moving again, walking towards the altar. As the statue approached him, the blue flames began to fade one by one. Are you telling me to hold on until time runs out? Then bring it on. Izuku clenched the knife he picked up, ready to survive till the end. Even with all the willpower remaining, it wouldn't be enough. He already knew this. He couldn't do anything in front of power. But still, he refused to give up. He tried his best to dodge the statue's attack, but one of the attacks managed to cut his right leg. Izuku leaned back, panting on the altar. Only up here, huh? Izuku thought that this was the end of his struggle. He was ready to accept his death, but his determination was still not dead. There was still a will to live in his eyes. One of the statues stabbed him in the chest with a spear and dropped him right on the altar. The altar turned red with blood. Izuku was out of breath due to his torn left shoulder. With the shadow of death looming over him, he prepared to die. But still, he did not accept an ending like this. He was scared. He refused to die, tears running down his face. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. Don't want to die. If there is another chance. As one of the statues was about to attack him, the last blue flame went out. At the same time, time stopped, and a message appears in front of him. You have completed all the requirements of the secret mission Weak Courage. What's this? Secret quest? Where is this message coming from? You have earned the right to become a player. Will you accept? Earned? Accept? What happened? Izuku stared blankly at the message until the next message made sense. You don't have much time left. If you refuse, your heart will stop about 0.2 seconds later. Will you accept? Accept, reject. What? If it's a second chance, mean I don't have to die. In that case, I'll take it. Welcome, players. Izuku opened his eyes. He stared at the white ceiling. The pungent smell of disinfectant was his smell. He could feel the sensation of the bed underneath. Izuku immediately recognized where he was. Hospital? He immediately examined his left shoulder and right leg, which had been severed for a moment before his consciousness disappeared. Still there, legs and shoulders intact. Not only that, but his old wounds also healed. Am I dreaming? Izuku was trying to remember what happened before he passed out when suddenly the door to his room opened. A nurse walked into the room to check on his condition. "Oh, are you awake?" Izuku stared at a nurse, her mind still processing what was going on. "By the way, how long have I been unconscious?" "It's been a week since you got here." "A week?" "Yes, that's right. Ah, that's right. There is someone who wants to see you." "See me? But who?" He felt strange. Among the people he knew, he was sure that no one wanted to see him. They didn't even care even if he was sick. "May I know who it is?" "I don't know. All I know is they brought you here. Wait a minute, I'll call them." After the nurse went out, two men in suits walked into the room. "Are you awake?" Izuku nodded in response. The two men approached the bed. Izuku had never seen the faces of the two of them before. "Is it the mister who brought me here?" "That's right. You must be confused by what happened." Izuku tilted his head in confusion. Indeed, he had several questions raging in his head. "But before that, let me introduce myself. Nice to meet you. My name is Sugimoto Rigi, the head of the Supervision Division of the Hunter Bureau." "Hunter Bureau?" "Yes, first let me explain your situation first." Sugimoto started to explain about the Hunter, Mana, Gate, and Awakening. A heart of a mysterious portal appeared 10 years ago. The portal, which became known as the Gate, connects this world with other worlds. Inside the gate is a dungeon filled with ferocious monsters. The appearance of this gate is followed by people who experience awakening. People who experience this awakening are called hunters. The person who receives awakening has an energy called mana in his body. This mana helps hunters produce attacks that can defeat monsters from within the dungeon. Mana is widespread throughout the area since the appearance of the gate, but only those who have access to mana can feel it. I have a question. If they appeared during that time, then why has no one ever known about it? That's because his whereabouts are very tightly regulated and very secretive, besides that gates usually appear in places where no one is around. After all, only the awakened ones can enter the gate, but recently the number of gates has begun to increase and has begun to appear around residential areas. I'm sorry, even though you're just a kid, but you have to go through all that. Izuku was silent, trying to assimilate the information he got. He was still trying to connect the hunter, the gate, the awakening, and the mana. So the reason you want to see me is related to this gate, isn't it? Yes, that's right, since we found you inside the dungeon. We want to ask what happened while inside and how you could have ended up there. Izuku then began his explanation, starting from how he was dragged into the alley, how he survived the attack of the green creatures, and how he ended up in a room full of statues, barely survived, and then woke up here. So you found a double dungeon. That's a rare case. I'm sorry, it must be difficult for you. We indeed found the double dungeon, but we didn't see the statue you mentioned before. We just found you lying unconscious on the altar. What? That's impossible. Sorry, but that's all we found. Izuku wanted to deny it, but he didn't have any solid evidence to prove his argument, and he was the only witness to this incident. By the way, we also want to do some tests on you. We believe that you have received an awakening since you were able to enter the dungeon. Sugimoto took out a device that looked like a detector and handed it to Izuku. This is a mana detector. Please put your hand on this mana crystal. Izuku followed Sugimoto's instructions and then put his hands on the crystal. Numbers began to appear on the detector and the results came out not long after. Sugimoto looked at the results. It showed 10. He sighed at the results. Even the weakest hunter had 70. How did it go? With you confirmed to have received a resurrection, we would like to ask if you would be willing to join us as hunters to protect this country from monsters. Of course, there will be a decent payment, but to avoid excessive attention, you should come to our facility as one of our agents. Of course, you can refuse, but you have to promise to keep it secret to avoid panicking the citizens. The public is now quite wary of villains. If the fact that there is a monster appears, we can't imagine the commotion it will cause, so please understand. Izuku was silent for a moment, trying to think about how he would make up his mind. Can I have more time to think? Sugimoto smiled and then stood up from his seat. He then handed over his business card. Of course, this hospital belongs to our facility, so take your time during your recovery, and please contact me again once you've made up your mind. Then please excuse us. Izuku nodded as they left his room. The door closed as he lay on his bed. He stared at the ceiling, precisely at the screen floating in front of him. You have an unread message. I wonder if they saw this message, but based on previous conversations, they didn't seem to be aware of it. The screen that appeared in front of him looked like a game interface. Izuku has played several games, so he recognized what was in front of him. How to open it. He tried to touch it, but his hand pierced it. He tilted his head, trying to figure out the screen in front of him. Is it open with voice? Open the message? Ring. As he said that, an electronic beep followed the opening of the message box. Message. Congratulations, you are now a player unread. Daily quest, preparing to become a strong unread. Oh, it works. Open. Ring. The system will help players develop. Failure to comply with system commands may result in penalties. You have received the reward. What about the others? Open. Ring. Daily quest, preparing to be strong. 100 push-ups. Incomplete Zirnia. 100 sit-ups. Incomplete Zirnia. 100 squats. Incomplete Zirnia. 10-kilometer run. Incomplete 010. Warning. Failing to complete the daily quest will result in a penalty quest. Izuku stared at the message. A daily quest on top of that preparation to be strong. What is this? Some kind of training program. He expected more than just the simple exercises he was used to. At the very least, it is certain that if he finishes his training in the quest, his body may improve a little. Izuku decided to ignore it. He was already quite tired of everything that happened recently. He closed his eyes, choosing to sleep to rest his overworked brain. Time passed while he was asleep. The clock finally pointed to 11:59:57, and while pointing to 12 Zine, a message appeared in front of him. Ring. You failed to complete the daily quest. You will be moved to the penalty zone for the specified duration. Izuku woke up as he began to feel the ground tremble. Earthquake? He jumped up and grabbed the bed frame at the foot of the bed. The vibration was so strong that he found it difficult to resist it. Vibrate, but as every second passed, the vibration was getting worse and worse. Suddenly, the bed frame he was holding disappeared from his hand. He could feel the sand in his hand. Sand? Izuku raised his head, seeing that he found himself in the middle of a vast desert. He stood up and looked around while patting the sand off his clothes. In every direction, he saw an endless expanse of sand stretching to the horizon. A desert? He felt a tremor in the sand from behind. He looked back to see a mound of earth appearing behind him. He narrowed his eyes. He knew something was wrong. The sand covering the mound flowed down, revealing a giant centipede hiding behind it. The fully revealed shape of the monster, its size is higher than a 5-story building. What's more, there are quite a few of them. Izuku froze. It was a very large centipede. He had never heard of or seen a centipede this big before. But it wasn't only the size of the centipede that surprised him. The red name floated above his head, as well as a message in front of him. Poisonous toothed giant sand centipede. Ring. Penalty quest. Survive. Goal. Survive for the required time. Time took 4 hours. Remaining time 4 hours 0 minutes 0 seconds. Timers on messages begin to decrease. The centipede began to chase him. He struggled to avoid the centipede. He continued to run across the desert with his life depended on it. Exactly 4 hours later, he reappeared in his room. He was lying there out of breath. The inside of his mouth was dry, his eyes sore with sand. Izuku was lying on the ground groaning. He didn't have the strength to even move a finger. What the hell was that? A message appeared in front of him again. You have completed the penalty search. Message. The reward for completing the penalty quest has arrived. Do you want to verify? Yes or no? Izuku could only stare at the message before finally fainting from exhaustion. Soon, a nurse walked into his room. She looked at Izuku lying on the floor unconscious. She immediately called the others to help him. It has been a few days since Izuku woke up. He had already started his training as the system ordered. Even now he is running around the hospital where he stays. There are a few things Izuku has learned about the system. First of all, this system is very similar to the system in the game. There are stats, intelligence, skills, pawn systems, rewards, quests, and penalties that are usually in the game. You can earn points through daily quests just like he does now. Secondly, only he can see it. And it seems that the system is there to help him become stronger. He wouldn't complain if he could become stronger through this. But he still doesn't know exactly what the system wants from him and what the system will get from him if he becomes stronger, and about who is behind this system that worries him. After completing his daily quest, he sat on the nearest bench receiving his reward. Ring. You have received the reward below. Reward 1, Status Recovery. Reward 2, Stat Points plus 3. Reward 3, Random Box X1. Accept it all? Accept. As he said that, his body was covered with fine light. All his fatigue was gone and his body felt lighter. Wow, it's so cool. He then looked at the screen showing his status. The information box suspended in the air contains various data regarding its status. Name, Izuku Yagi. Level 1. Class, None. Title, None. HP, 100. MP, 10. Fatigue, 0. Statistics. Strength, 13. Vitality, 10. Agility, 10. Intelligence, 13. Sense, 10. Available stat points, 3. Skill. Passive skill. Unknown LV, max. Unyielding spirit, 1 LV, 1. Active skill. Sprint, 2 LV, 1. Should I use the points? He then transferred all the stat points to the power of the state after some consideration. Ring. Statistics. Strength, 16. Vitality, 10. Agility, 10. Intelligence, 13. Sense, 10. Available stat points, 0. After managing his status, he then looked at the green key he got from a random box as a reward after completing the daily quest. A screen displaying important information appears. Item, Dungeon Key. Item rank E. Type, Key. The key that allows instant dungeon creation. You can use this at the door of the Asakusa Toei subway line. Should I try it? Izuku decided to give it a try. After asking to leave the hospital for a while, he went straight to the Toei subway. When he arrived, there were not too many people there. He took out the key from his inventory. How do I use it? Should I put it at the entrance? He pushed the key in front of the entrance. A blue light began to swirl at the entrance of the station. He could feel the flow of energy from the inside. He took a deep breath and then went inside. As he entered, the interior of the station turned into a mess as if it had been abandoned for a long time. The door of the station closed as soon as he entered. A screen appeared in front of him again. Alarm. You cannot leave the dungeon. Either kill the boss or use Hearthstone. You must be joking. You asked me to clear this all by myself. I almost died doing it last time. Izuku couldn't help but sigh. He had no other choice but to do so. He began to walk deeper into the dungeon. The deeper he go, he could smell the fishy smell of blood in the air. He could hear the growl of the fierce beasts from the front, followed by the appearance of the red wolf in front of him. There is also a name that flies over the wolf's head. Steel Fang Raken. The wolf rushed towards Izuku, trying to bite him, but Izuku managed to dodge. He then took out the knife that was somehow in his inventory. Izuku rushed toward the wolf and attacked him with his knife. He stepped forward to avoid the wolf's bite, then stabbed it directly in the heart. Ring. You have defeated Steel Fang Raken. You leveled up. A notice appeared in front of him moments after he killed the wolf. His level increased after he defeated the wolf, and his stats also increased. My level went up. Can I become strong with this? The wolf dies and drops a drop item, although all that is dropped is a garbage class item. In the end, he only sold it in the shop. It didn't take long for other wolves began to appear, and not just one, but their number also increased over time. This will not end quickly. Time passed and Izuku had killed a lot of monsters. Leveled up notifications also keep popping up. The way of fighting also began to improve so that killing the monsters that appeared became easier. Unbeknownst to him, the title Wolf Slayer appeared in his status. He had also obtained a Heartstone. Should I stop? No, it'll be for nothing if I stop now. Not wanting to waste the opportunity, Izuku decided to keep going. The more he got in, the more monsters appeared. Not only wolves, but also panthers and apes start to appear. He knew that he was getting stronger and stronger. He also studied monster attack patterns so that he could predict where they would appear. He also noticed that the discoloration of the monster's name, originally orange and now white, means that he has become stronger than before. White means weak, orange means strong, and red means very strong. Izuku finally reached the boss room, inside of which was a giant snake with an orange name on top of his head. Swamp's ruler, Blue Poison Fangs Risaka. Swamp's ruler, Blue Poison Fangs Risaka. The giant snake in front of him whipped his tail, making Izuku hit the wall. He tried to block it, but unfortunately, his strength was not enough for him. Izuku groaned in pain and vomited a little blood from his mouth. He tried to stand up even though his legs were shaking, preparing to face the enemy in front of him. Izuku ran towards the snake, trying to slice it with his knife, but the snake's scales were harder than he thought, which made the knife useless to fight it. He tried to think of a different idea, but the snake didn't give him time and hit him with its tail. Moreover, the movement of snakes is very fast due to the environment. I can't fall here, I'm here to become stronger. Izuku ran towards the snake, he grabbed the snake's neck and held it tightly. Put all the stat points on the strength. He tightened his grasp, grasping it as tightly as possible. He exerted all his strength into his grasp, causing the snake to suffocate to death. Ring. You have defeated the Lord of the Swamp, Blue Poison Fangs Risaka. You leveled up. You leveled up. You leveled up. Ha ha ha. I guess I got a bit stronger. Izuku leaned on the body of the snake he had just killed. The notification screen kept popping up in front of him. In addition to the notification of leveling up, he also got an item notification. Ring. You have obtained Risaka's fangs. Do you want to accept it? You have obtained Risaka's venom. Do you want to accept it? Accept all. As he spoke, a dagger made of bones and a bag filled with poisonous substances appeared in his outstretched hand. Item, Risaka's fangs. Item class, C. Type, dagger. Attack plus 25. Inflicts paralysis and bleeding on attacks. Paralysis. The target has a chance to become immobile. Bleeding. The target will lose 1% of health per second. 3. Item, Risaka's venom. Item class A. Type, elixir 4. Buff Kasaka armored scales is applied to consumption. A weak muscle debuff is applied to consumption. Risaka armored scales. Physical damage reduction plus 20%. Weak muscles. Strength 35. Izuku looked at the item he had just gotten. Usually, he got junk-grade items from inferior monsters, and now he gets weapon items and elixir. As expected of the boss, the dropped items are pretty good here. He held a dagger in his hand. The dagger felt fit in his hand. He swung it left and right, trying to get used to it. He smiled in satisfaction with this item, and then put it back into his inventory and shifted his gaze to the other items. As he read the information on the screen, he became a little hesitant. Although it is classified as a class item and has the effect of reducing physical damage by 20%, this item also has a debuff that weakens the muscles of 35 STR. He decided to keep it in the inventory. Maybe it could come in handy somehow. After he finished with his item, a screen appeared and the interior of the station returned to normal. He then saw her appearance. His clothes were dirty and torn, his body was covered in scratches and cuts, and his face was also a mess. With his current condition, he looks like a beggar. Fortunately, no one was there at that time, so he could avoid unnecessary attention. Everyone would be shocked if a boy suddenly appeared out of nowhere in tattered clothes and a body full of wounds. He was then rushed to the hospital where he currently stays to receive treatment for his injuries. The next morning, he did a daily quest in his room. When he was done, he then looked at the business card Sugimoto gave him that day on his bedside table. Should I call him? I can become stronger after killing monsters. This can be a good opportunity to grow stronger. After cleaning himself up, he used one of the phones in the hospital to make a call. It didn't take long, Sugimoto finally replied. Hello, Sugimoto-san, this is Izuku. Ah, so how is Izuku-kun? Your previous offer, I will accept it. Not long after he called, someone from the Hunter Bureau came to pick him up. A woman in a black suit came to pick him up in front of the hospital. Hello, my name is Hankawa. I'm from the Hunting Bureau, and I'm here to pick you up. Is your name Izuku, correct? Yes, that's right. Then, from here, we will go directly to the Bureau office. Is there any place you want to visit first? No. Then let's go. Because the distance was not far from the hospital, it didn't take long for them to get to the office of the Hunter Bureau. Izuku narrowed his eyes as soon as they arrived. From the outside, this office looks like an ordinary office. The building consists of 2 floors with a sign that reads Hunter Local Hero Agency. Excuse me, Hankawa-san, isn't this the office of the Heroes Agency? That's right, this office is just for display only. The real Hunter Bureau is directly below it. Izuku just nodded and then followed her into the office. Inside, he could see that several heroes were doing their jobs, and some office workers received phone calls or made reports. They then went to the elevator. Hankawa then pressed the button that took them to the B2 floor. Izuku was a little puzzled. Based on what Hankawa said about the underground office of the Hunter Bureau, wouldn't it be too small for an office of a government secret agency? He was about to question it, but he just kept it for the time being. They arrived downstairs. Hankawa then guided him through several hallways with complicated turns until they arrived at the elevator. Hankawa placed his ID in the detector, then the elevator door opened. The two entered the elevator, this time different from the previous elevator. There are more floor buttons here. They then headed to the B28 floor, and when they arrived, Sugimoto was already waiting for them there. Welcome to the Hunter Bureau. Is there any problem during the trip? No, sir. Good. Hankawa, you can rest now. Leave the rest to me. Yes, sir. Hankawa left them. Sugimoto then took Izuku to the living room to talk. As soon as they arrived, Sugimoto asked him to sit down and then prepare tea for them. So, Izuku-kun, have you considered my offer before? After thinking about it carefully, I have decided to become a hunter. I used to dream of being a hero, but since I was quirkless, I had to bury the dream. But now I have been allowed to fulfill my dream, albeit in a different way. Sugimoto then smiled at Izuku's answer. He knew that the child in front of him had a kind of strong willpower. He was glad that Izuku was willing to accept his offer. I'm glad you are willing to accept it. Should we continue the process of transferring you to the Bureau? Yes, please. Then should we tell your family about this matter? It's not necessary. They won't even care, even if I disappear. Sugimoto then looked at Izuku with a pitying look. He somehow understood the situation. He has experienced many similar cases, ignored simply because quirkless. I understand your situation. Most of the hunters here have almost the same cases as you. If nothing else, you can start moving here from today. You will also receive training from pro hunters. We will also provide for your needs during your stay here, ranging from accommodation, food, and raid equipment to other needs such as bank accounts, communication tools, and many others. Your payment will be directly transferred to the bank account provided by the Hunter Bureau, so you don't have to worry about financial problems. Is everything clear? If you still have any questions, please ask. Thank you, Sugimoto-san. Izuku was silent for a moment. He was happy to be able to get what he needed while he was here. But there is still one thing that bothers him, his family. Sugimoto-san, can I ask you for help? Sure, what is it? Can you help me erase all traces of me during my work here? Also, can you help remove me from my family's list? Sugimoto tilted his head, confused by the help Izuku asked for. You don't have to worry about that. All hunter operations are included as government operations, so it's only natural that it's a secret. But as for the other one, may I ask why? This is just a personal request. I just think that my family doesn't need someone like me. I also don't just want to keep the surname that has thrown me out. It's fine if you can't help me with that. It's not impossible to do, it's just that the process is quite complicated, and we can't continue the process further as long as the family in question disagrees. In the worst case, we may have to fake your death to do it. But I'll try. Izuku then stood up, bowing towards Sugimoto at a perfect 90 degrees. Thank you, Sugimoto-san. I will make sure to work hard from now on. Sugimoto smiled when he saw the earnestness of determination that Izuku had. You're welcome. Meanwhile, at Yagi's residence, Toshinori and Inko are having a serious conversation with their daughter Izumi. Toshinori was about to tell Izumi the truth behind his quirk. Izumi, you know that your father is a hero. Yes. There is something you should know. It's about my quirk. Izumi swallowed hard at what her father was about to say. Listen carefully to Izumi. My quirk is called One for All. This is a passed-down quirk. This quirk is like a torch that carries the spirit of ancestors from generation to generation. One person has developed this power and then passed it on to another person who will also develop it, and so on. It is the embodiment of a force that is constantly rotating with brave people with sincere hearts. And I want you to inherit this power. Izumi was surprised by the sudden announcement her father made. She was very happy that her father recognized her, but she suddenly thought of her brother. But Dad, what about Izuku? You already know that the task of a hero is to fight the villain. I can't let him go there facing danger alone when he doesn't have any strength to protect himself. I understand, Dad. I will accept it. That's my daughter. Then let's start our practice to make you the next one hero. Yes, Dad. As Izuku estimated, his family didn't even realize that he had been missing for a few days. They had forgotten about him for the next few months, until one day they realized that something was missing. The first person to notice was Izumi. She tried to tell her parents that she couldn't find her brother anywhere. She also tried to ask her friends, and of course, they didn't know anything. They even forgot that Izumi had a brother. They tried to find him through the police and All Might's connections as a hero, but after a year of no results, they finally give up and stop looking for him. Izuku, who witnessed all this, couldn't help but laugh at the stupidity of his former family. He may have left his family, but he will never forget where he came from and who took him on this road. And thanks to the help of Sugimoto, his name was finally removed from the family register. For the past year, Izuku has been training to become a hunter. On his first day, he was introduced to the rest of the training. He was quite surprised by the fact that most hunters don't have a quirk like him, but among these hunters, Izuku is the youngest. Since rumors about the double dungeon spread, many have talked about him as a survival double dungeon. Thanks to that, Izuku became quite famous among the hunters and bureau employees. Rumors about him don't stop there. Izuku is also famous for being the youngest and fastest graduate throughout the hunter's training record. Thanks to his smart brain and his ability to adapt quickly, Izuku was able to complete his training within 2 years, and now he is allowed to follow the raid in a team. He is currently doing his daily quests in his room. In this 1 year, his appearance has changed a lot. His body began to take shape, muscles also began to appear on his body, and he was tall beyond children of his age. Just from their appearance, Izuku looks like a pre-teenage child. When Izuku finished with his training, he felt someone approaching his room. Soon there was a knock on the door. Izuku, you're inside. Yes, wait a minute. He then opened the door to see who it was.
Sugimoto-san, what's the matter?
Just stop by and give this to you. You haven't gotten ready yet. You'll be late for your first raid.
Sugimoto gives Izuku a file he requested earlier. He asked Sugimoto if he could get any information about the dungeon he was going to attack and the monsters inside.
Thanks for this. I just finished my daily practice, and I was just about to get ready. You'd better hurry up. The others will be gathered soon. Well, I will, and thank you again for this. Sujimoto then left Izuku so he could get ready. As Sujimoto left, Izuku entered his room. He opened the file that Sujimoto gave him. After a glance, he closed the file and got ready. He was wearing the body armor provided for him. He also carried the dagger provided by the bureau as a backup and brought the Rasaka's fang as his main weapon. When finished, he then headed to the meeting room where the raid members gathered. After his preparations were complete, Izuku then headed to the meeting room to gather with the other raid team. This raid team consisted of 6 people with their respective classes, such as team leaders, tankers, healers, warriors, mages, and assassins. Izuku arrived at the meeting room. 4 people had already gathered there. Sorry, I'm late. One of the men in the room stood up and approached him. He is a big man with a lot of muscles, brown hair, and a scar on his left eye. It's okay, we are still waiting for the leader to come. You must be that rumored trainee. I am Daichi Isamu, B-rank tanker. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you too. My name is Izuku, E-rank assassin. Please help everyone. Hey, isn't he just a kid? We already have a troublesome teenager over here, and now they want us to babysit a child. A tall blonde man with a sword around his waist approached him and looked down at Izuku. He squinted his eyes at him, indicating that he didn't like him. Hey, who are you calling the troublesome old man? A teen boy with white hair and his body covered with bandages to cover his burn marks. He looked at the blonde man with a disapproving look. Leave him alone, besides that he's quite cute, isn't he? By the way, I'm Kyoko Manami, B-rank healer. The blonde over there was Katsuhito Masao, C-rank swordsman, and the white-haired boy there is Todoroki Taoya, a mage. He is also E-rank just like you. Nice to meet you, boy. A beautiful woman with blue hair and green eyes stood behind him. She smiled at Izuku and tried to hug him, but Izuku immediately avoided her. Aw, please let this sister hug you just once. Stop it, he's uncomfortable with it. Izuku turned his head to see a red-haired man with gray eyes carrying a big sword on his back. Seems to have all gotten acquainted with each other. I'm Ikiru Hiroto, a rank swordsman, the leader of this raid this time. It's nice to meet you guys. After Ikiru arrives and introduces himself, they begin a briefing for the raid. Starting from basic information such as dungeon grade, the monsters in it, and the battle formations they will use. Ikiru is very good at giving directions since he was a veteran hunter. He has been a hunter for 5 years, and he is also an A-rank hunter. Hunter's rank is determined based on their rank and ability. But for the team leader, it also includes how they manage the team. There are currently about 30 A rank, 100 B rank, 350 C rank, and more than 1,000 D ranks and E ranks actively serving as hunters throughout Japan. There were also ranked S among the hunters, but there were too few of them. Japan only had 5, and Sujimoto Ryuji was also one of them. Each hunter on duty is divided into several raid teams. There are currently more than 200 active teams. This team is not always permanent. Members can change at any time, and as long as hunters can fight, they can be deployed at any time. Just like the current team, this team is intended to train beginners like Izuku and Todoroki to get used to the battles inside the dungeon. They have indeed received training, but what happens on the field is often different from training, so they need a companion to ensure the new hunter's safety. They had finished the briefing and were currently heading towards the gate. The location gate is near an abandoned building in Yokohama. The gate's rank is a D rank, suitable for training beginners. The monsters faced are also only wolf kind of monsters, just like the ones Izuku faced when entering the instant dungeon. Are you nervous, Izuku-kan? Kyoko approached him from behind. She put her face closer. Izuku was quite surprised and quickly retreated. Not really, it's just that it's been a long time since I get into the gate. Tesk, arrogant brat. Katsuhito walked past him and soon entered the gate. Others began to follow him inside. Inside the dungeon, it looked like a cave that brought back unpleasant memories for Izuku. The image of the huge statue he had encountered when he first entered the dungeon was still clear in his head. He shook his head to erase the images, refocusing on the attack in front of him. They kept going, and eventually they met the first group of enemies. Just like before, Izuku faced a group of wolves, but now he is not alone, he came as a group. The wolves started attacking them. Ikiru, Katsuhiko, and Daichai took care of the wolves on the front line, Izuku on the back line, and Todoroki burned the rest with fire, while Kyoko supported them with buff magic. They finished it pretty quickly. They just kept walking in and facing more and more monsters the more they left. They finally reached the boss room. The boss monster was a dire wolf with an army of other wolves in it. The formation they used was still the same, but this time they let Izuku and Todoroki take care of the boss alone, while the rest of the team took care of the rest of the wolf. Although Katsuhiko opposes it, he eventually agrees since he can't argue with Ikiru. Izuku rushes toward the boss, while Todoroki supports him from behind. He burns every wolf that will pounce on Izuku. Izuku attacks the boss's ankle with Rasaka's fang, leaving a paralyzing and bleeding effect on it. Dire Wolf fell to its knees. Izuku continued to attack using his sprint skills to increase his attack speed. Dire Wolf's body was covered in scars and began to bleed. Izuku then cut off his head to finish the fight. A familiar ringing and a notice appeared in front of him. Ring. The dungeon boss has been killed. You leveled up. You leveled up. He smiled when he saw the notification in front of him. It's been a long time since he fought monsters. He just did his daily quest so that his level improved quite slowly. He then checked his status. Name, Izuku. Level, 21. Jobs, none. Title, Wolf Slayer. HP, 2600. MP, 391. Fatigues, 37. Stats, Strength, 53. Vitality, 30. Agility, 38. Intelligence, 33. Sense, 32. Available stat points, 0. Skill. Passive skill. Unknown LV. Max. Unyielding Spirit 1 LV. 1. Active skill. Sprint 2 LV. 1. He smiled, knowing that his level had improved. He looked around and found his other teammates had finished with the wolf army. They gathered after collecting the wolf mana crystals. Good job, everyone. Now let's leave here before the gate closes. As they all came out of the dungeon, they were greeted by the Bureau's agents as soon as they came out. Ikiru is approached by agents to complete the report, while members of his raid head near the car to rest and clean up their equipment. Kyoko then approached Izuku, who was cleaning the blood stains from his dagger. She sat down beside him and struck up a conversation with him. So Izuku-kun, how is your first raid? Not so bad. It's easier thanks to everyone's help. Is that so? Then what about the little party after this to celebrate your first raid? Is it okay? Then what about the others? Of course, they have to come. It's a celebration after all. Ikiru and Daichai then joined the conversation with them after finishing their business with the Bureau's agent. Sounds fun. I know my good yakiniku restaurant near the Bureau office. Then what about you two? Are you guys coming? Kyoko then turned her gaze to Todoroki and Katsuhiko. Katsuhiko just ignored her and left, while Todoroki was about to leave but was stopped by Kyoko. Where do you think you're leaving, young man? This is a celebration for you too, so you have to come no matter what. With Todoroki being dragged by Kyoko, they head to the restaurant Daichai recommended to them. There are not many people at this time in the restaurant. They are sitting at a table for 6 people waiting for orders. While waiting, they started sharing conversations about themselves, mostly asking about Izuku and Todoroki since they were new. Both Izuku and Todoroki are still willing to answer some questions, mostly Izuku, but when it comes to personal questions, Izuku just smiles at them, while Todoroki stays silent. Izuku tries not to reveal his personal life as much as possible. He just didn't want people to remember him as part of his former family. They kept talking until finally Kyoko got drunk and started clinging to Izuku. Just as he was about to start making a fuss, Daichai knocked him unconscious and decided to take him back to his apartment. They decided to end the party and go home after Ikiru escorted Todoroki and Izuku back to the Bureau's dormitory. Ikiru then left them in front of the dorm, leaving Izuku alone with Todoroki. The atmosphere between the two of them was awkward. Izuku tried to lighten the mood by starting a conversation. "So Todoroki-san, you also live in a dormitory too? None of your business." Todoroki then walked away to the dormitory, leaving Izuku alone. Izuku just stared at Todoroki as he went further. What a grumpy man. Izuku then moved from where he was standing and decided to stop by the library. Izuku quite often goes to the library to study or to be alone. There are still many things he doesn't know about this world, also to fulfill his hobby of analyzing things. Izuku arrived at the library, and the librarian recognized him and greeted him as soon as she sees him. She is one of the staff working in the bureau. Her name is Tomomi Yuri. She has short brown hair, clear green eyes, and thick glasses. "You came again today too, Izuku-kun?" "Ah, yes, Tomomi-san, how was your day?" "Same as usual, how about you?" "I heard that you are going to do your first raid today, so how was it?" Izuku smiled at Tomomi and then replied, "Nothing special, thanks to everyone's help the raid is much easier." "Is that so? It's good to hear it. Oh, by the way, the book you asked for I have saved for you. Wait a moment, I will get it soon." Tomomi looked for something in her desk drawer and took a few books and handed them to Izuku. "Thank you, Tomomi-san, I appreciate it." "Are you welcome? But you are amazing. Not many people are willing to read books these days. Is there any reason?" "This is just part of my hobby. Can I borrow a place here?" Sure, use as much as you like." "Thank you, Tomomi-san." Izuku headed to one of the chairs by the window. There are not many people in the library, so he can enjoy and focus on his work. Izuku opened a few pages and read it. He borrowed a book containing information about monsters. Izuku also took a few books from the shelf containing the same topic. Izuku often did personal research on monsters during his training, and he still does it today. He also had time to write a paper on monsters and dungeons, which was appreciated by the trainers and researchers. Izuku often studies monsters, ranging from their types, characteristics, habits, strengths, and weaknesses. In addition, he also learned about the strategy and attack patterns in the raid, as well as the rules of the hunter. Izuku wrote it down in the notebook he always carried with him to collect information. There were so many things he didn't know about gates, hunters, and monsters. He wanted to know why they appeared in the first place, and the reason why mana was different from quirks, even though their usage could be said to be similar. Izuku tried to find the answer, but he only found it vague. He has some theories, but still has no evidence to prove his theory. He can only continue to study and continue to enter the gate to find the truth. One day, he will expose the truth about this power. Izuku spent his time in the library until the library clock closed. He went to the front desk to borrow some books to take to his room in the dormitory. "Excuse me, Tomomi-san, can I borrow these books to take home?" "Sure, but be sure to return it after 3 days, okay?" "I will, thank you, Tomomi-san." "You are welcome. See you again, Izuku-kun." On his way to the dormitory, he met Todoroki, who was sitting alone on the park bench of the dormitory. His face was staring blankly at the sky. He looked like he was lost in thought. Izuku decided to approach him and greet him. "Todoroki-san." Todoroki looked at who was calling him. He clicked his tongue when he saw Izuku, then took his gaze off him. "Tisk, what do you want?" "What are you doing here?" "None of your business." Izuku looked at Todoroki. He then tried to ask the question that was in his head when he heard his name. "Todoroki-san, are you perhaps the son of the No? To Hero Endeavor?" Todoroki widened his eyes when he heard the name. He then grabbed Izuku by the collar, pulling it roughly. "You, where did you hear it?" "Just guessed. When I heard your surname, it was the same name as the name Endeavor." Todoroki let go of his grip, letting Izuku fall. "TCH, sharp boy, so what? Are you going to make fun of me?" "No, I'm just curious. Why did the son of No, To Hero, become a hunter?" "Why should I tell you? Did I go too far?" "I'm sorry for that because we're on the same team, so I thought it would be better if we become good friends. Again, sorry to bother you. I'll excuse myself. See you later." Izuku then turned towards his dormitory, leaving Todoroki behind. Todoroki looked at Izuku's increasingly distant back. Tusk, he's just a kid, what does he know? So that concludes our first part of our series. Stay tuned for the second part of the series. If you enjoyed this video, then don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Until next time.